I'll repeat. We just said it before the camera rolled, and it's really good to see you, Carl. A lot to talk about. There are one or two problems left that could be addressed. I don't think everything's perfect yet, so we can address those with our consul, Carl Pearson. And in the audience, welcome very much to Conversations. I introduce the guest, Carl Pearson, who is one of the busiest men I've ever in all my life met, who works tirelessly in the interest, really broadly seen, issues of justice. He's an attorney, particularly antitrust concern, and also human rights, I believe, and that sort of thing, and a tireless worker for the cause of justice and for transformation of the human condition. And Carl, welcome very much to Conversation.
Thank you. I would be interested in meeting such a person. Oh,
no, that's good. We've done it in the past with you before, but you've done so well. You got into Harvard Law and got through all of that and everything after having flunked out of school or something. Your life is really good. I don't know if we want to go, maybe you could take in about 3 minutes your background leading up. Then we want to talk about what the hell you've been up to since last I saw you, because it's obviously going to involve about 20 really important projects. But just real quick, your background.
Real quick, I got tired of high school, so I dropped out. I failed French, and I just had enough, and I walked out. And then I bummed around for a year, and I decided to join the Army. So I got into the Army thinking that I could call upon asthma as a way of getting out. So when I finally decided I wanted to get out of the Army, the doctor said, "What asthma?" So I wound up with 3 years in the Army, And I looked around for a college that was willing to take me, and I couldn't find any except LIU and Columbia. But Columbia was general studies, no degree.
Right, okay.
So I said, the heck with that. I went to LIU, and about a week later, I became the assistant to the admissions officer.
At LIU.
And a year later, I became the president of the student body.
Boy, I'll tell you.
And a year later, I was in Harvard Law School on a full scholarship.
Right.
And I
as the rest they say is history.
I did a quick turnaround, and I worked awfully hard, and I've continued to work. And it surprises me that many people don't work. There's a change in ethic in America and the world, possibly. But I see that the old-timers put in a lot of time, and they just keep working away, and we don't understand why the system is collapsing. Why, when we continue to put in our work, the rewards are not there, that other people are getting the rewards. The rewards seem to be going to the people that trick you into giving up your money to them.
Does seem that way, doesn't
and
it?
they get the rewards, and they get the politicians. They buy off the politicians.
Best democracy money can buy. Greg Palast.
This is what's happening here. So how do we cope with that? What do we do to change that?
Yeah, and you're very concerned about antitrust. I
Absolutely.
know you've done that. I think you're the only person I know that sued Google.
Well, take for example. That's an update on that.
Yes, please. I want to get an update on all.
For 3 years approximately, I was the only person in the world who has brought a lawsuit against Google for monopolization. The only person in the entire world. However, about 2 or 3 months ago, a major law firm in Washington, D.C., on behalf of somebody in Philadelphia, brought a similar action comparable to mine, knowing about mine, and they too are pursuing this. But this is a major law firm, a big one. So that's very useful for me to know.
Have you been able to link up with that major
I'm
law
linked
firm,
up with
or
them.
in a collegial way in that?
Well, I'm linked up with them.
Okay,
but
good.
My action in the district court was dismissed.
Okay.
The Google selects their own judges. They
they select Congress.
Well, they select their own judge.
Okay.
And the way they do it is that anyone that wants to sue Google has to file an action in Santa Clara County, California. There are 670 federal judges throughout the United States, but only 3 in Santa Clara County.
Wow.
In San Jose. And only one of them is on Google antitrust cases. So they mark this a related case because it's antitrust. It goes to the same judge, and the same result takes place where the case is dismissed. All of this works.
Do they have a rubber stamp that says dismissed?
Well, I think it's broader than that. I think you find that the rubber stamp occurs in too many cases, even though they're not just antitrust. Across the board, judges tend to dismiss cases.
Okay.
Across the board.
Certainly, Supreme Court does.
Well, all over the place.
And
the reason they do it is this.
It's different dismissing and not accepting to hear. I don't understand the law.
Somebody spends a lot of time and money and brings an action because they're aggrieved and they're hurting and they're suing some big company.
Right.
I can tell you immediately, 9 times out of 10, the action will be dismissed on one pretext or another. It doesn't matter how good it is, how bad it is. These cases get dismissed.
Is that the same as being not accepted?
Well, it means that the judge has determined in the judge's own good wisdom that there is no claim that they can make.
It's frivolous?
They use different words.
Yeah, right.
Different words, but frivolous is one word they use. There's no justiciable issue here, that it doesn't meet the requirements of the various causes of action.
Winston Churchill once said the law can be an ass. And the law can be manipulated by the powerful, no?
Well, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on who the judges are. So Bush II and Bush I had a program of putting in judges that would be more apt to dismiss cases than other judges.
Okay. Yeah.
And they have succeeded admirably in dismissing many, many actions. And the problem that we now have is that even with a new administration that wants to go a different direction, they still are faced with a lifetime of judges who were appointed in order to dismiss cases rather than to be allowing novel cases or rather than giving justice in a broad sense. They're very strict constructionists that you have to prove a heck of a lot, and perhaps even nothing will help in order to get any relief. So that many cases in court now will never get relief because it takes years to work out a group of judges who were appointed in order to dismiss cases.
I wonder if I could ask you something, because you understand the law. Now, my dad was a lawyer, but I never did cotton to it and everything. I get very confused and everything. Why are some judges elected, and why are some appointed, and what's the difference, and is there a difference, and is the difference significant?
Okay, in federal court, any Article III judge appointed under the Constitution is there for life if he wants to be.
Article III?
Well, under Article III of the Constitution, they're lifetime appointees. So that you know that if a person is appointed for life, that he is not subjected to pressure. Is that correct?
Well, that's supposedly what they do with tenure for professors.
But wouldn't that be true?
Yes, I would think.
Now, would you say that a judge who wants to be that a judge in a circuit court of appeals that would like to be appointed to the Supreme Court, do you feel that that judge has pressure or not when deciding a case?
I would think so.
Yes, so
that just career pressure.
So that pressure is there anyway, even though a judge is there for life. So they're subject to the same pressure. But they're there for life, and you can't get rid of them. You can't elect them. The federal judges are not elected.
Federal, is that the way it is?
Yes.
Federal, okay.
And
it's Article
federal magistrates are appointed. And the goal, and I think a legitimate goal of most magistrate judges who are merely appointed by the judges in the district, a goal for them is to become an Article III judge.
I see.
So that let's say that you're up before a magistrate, and this is not to be critical of them. This is just human nature. If you
it's not like a referee.
It's like a para-judge. It's
paralegal para-judge, right?
That's really what it is. But they have awesome power.
Really?
They have power that is just, and so does a bankruptcy judge. A bankruptcy judge years ago, they would put in it was such a low level, it was called a referee in bankruptcy, that in Queens I delivered papers to a referee in bankruptcy who had his office in what looked like a bathroom.
Oh, really?
In some little office building. It was that dinky. Now they are handling trillion-dollar matters.
That's what Ed Dirksen would call real money.
That is real money. So that the power of the bankruptcy judge, to a great extent, is much bigger, much larger economically than the power of just any one federal judge.
Right, and the bankruptcy process seems to be moving much more with alacrity. I had a program I did 20 years ago with Henry Sweetbaum, who had done the bankruptcy for Lowe's, which was done. They got it completed within a record time of 3 years or something like that. And now they seem to get these bankruptcy things, even on Chrysler and everything that's going on now, huge implications. And they seem to be able to think they can get that all done so much more adroitly or quickly or something,
Well,
but it's an involved.
Here's the reason that
very
it can happen.
Complex.
A judge a bankruptcy judge quite often will decide matters on the same day that they're presented to him. The papers are all presented in advance over a 2 or 3 week period.
But when you have a huge corporation, doesn't it become very involved and take a long time? And
well, it would if you weren't in bankruptcy. But if you're in bankruptcy, you have to cut the issues down and cut to the chase, present the narrow issue to the judge, and the judge the next day will say yes or no very quickly.
You're talking about individual or large involvement?
Well,
trillions of dollars?
These
they're going to decide on this. On a napkin in a thing?
Yeah, they're generally not
That's
drawn out.
hard to understand the way the work can do that. A stipulation written in pencil on a piece of paper has all kinds of meat.
You have one person saying that the bondholders object to the reorganization and they want it thrown out. And the other side says we think the bondholders should take a cut and this is the position we want. So the judge has to decide between those two issues.
Yeah, but there'd be a lot of issues within a huge corporation. It involves a lot of dealers in terms of automobiles.
The judge will decide that I'm going to cram it down the bondholders' throats, and this is the way it's going to be, and he signs the order, and that's it. It's simple. It works very quickly. Take, for example, every municipality, every city in the United States has problems with excessive compensation to municipal workers in the form of pension funds that are unfunded, that are getting worse and worse, and that are causing bankruptcy really for the towns and villages
of governmental agencies.
So what I proposed recently, and I have a website, I think it is, or something.
How many websites do you have?
Over 100.
100 websites. It's covering everything. He puts up a website like I write a note home to my sister.
So what I propose for that is that we allow any group of citizens to file a petition, an involuntary petition for partial bankruptcy of any municipality so that the issue can be limited to compensation for workers. Forget about all the other issues. Make it a simple bankruptcy. Let the bankruptcy judge determine whether or not it's fair for the rest of the people to be paying salaries that are 3 times what the average person is working for in that city. Is that a legitimate thing for workers for the city to keep getting raises when the rest of the people are getting thrown out of jobs?
And that's something about railroad workers here, rail workers doing that. And does that happen across the country?
Well, it's all over. It's happening all over the country that the disparity now. We thought that we had a disparity.
And retirement, too. They can
that's part of the...
Or disability.
Well, all of that.
They can say, I got a backache or something.
All of that. So all of those issues could be considered a partial bankruptcy.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying that we need, is to have a partial bankruptcy where you can deal with these issues and make a city reform itself, even though it may not want to. It may not have the political ability to reform itself, but in bankruptcy, a judge can just sign something and reform you, whether you like it or not.
That's
and I think we need that.
Okay, that sounds good. It sounds to me like one of the things you have in mind about we ought to have a People's Attorney General system within the
Absolutely.
system, which it nests with that. You're 100 sites, 100, okay? That's a lot of patterns, begin to get a look at things, and they all relate in terms of a certain way. And I know the one thing that motivates you more than anything else, there ought to be something that brings some justice and rights to the people instead of just to the vested interests, which are so ensconced.
Here's the way.
I think that's the general principle that motivates
It is,
you.
and here's basically the way it should work. That for many years we used the revolver system of local justice. We had a police force that had guns that would go around and enforce the law. And in doing that, we forgot completely about Wall Street and the financial interests that were stealing the country, and there was no lawman at all. The guns didn't work.
Willie Sutton.
The guns never worked.
Yeah, right.
We needed a sheriff with a law book, and we never had that.
We haven't had that.
We need an attorney general in every town and
for
village
for
the people to enforce the rights of the people at government expense,
rather than enforce the obligations.
Have you ever tried to go into court?
Oh,
do you know what it costs to go into court?
I don't.
Okay, a woman or a man or woman, I've had like 20 calls today. Somebody called me up, a woman called me up and said that she had a problem with a trademark. and somebody wanted to take away the trademark from her, and she wanted to keep the trademark, and I explained, I had to ask her first, well, are you a company that has $50 million in sales? She says, oh, no. Well, I said, do you have $1 million or $2 million in sales? I said, oh, no. She said, oh, no. And I said, well, are you really like a home, you're working out of your home? And she said, yes. I said, then what I urge you to do is to do anything the other side wants. Do not engage in litigation, because let me put it this way. Let's say your trademark is Rosebud.
Okay.
I'm making it up.
Great sled.
Your trademark is Rosebud. And you're selling
sleds.
No, well, you're selling, let's say, fresheners for an automobile or something like that. Would you pay somebody right now $50,000 to keep that trademark? And she said, of course not. I said, well, you're not going to, you would spend $50,000 in a lawsuit. If you won't spend $50,000 to keep that, then forget about trying to defend yourself. Do anything you want, or they want. Give up, change your mark to Rose Beer or something else, but just stay away.
Rose Blossom.
Anything, but do whatever they want as quickly as possible. Stay away from litigation. You can't afford it. Now, what I would like to see is that
the deck is stacked.
I would like to see that the rights of people at the local level of government be handled to some extent, where there's group problems, that the Attorney General take over the representation of the rights of the people.
And have a source of financing to make that possible.
Well, the government, the taxpayer financing.
That ties into another view of things that you've been advancing.
But I wouldn't say that the Rosebud case would be something that the town Attorney General would handle, except I'm making this up now. This woman had 50 people employed in that town whose livelihood depended upon that trademark. I would then bring that action. I would defend her. So you have to have some, you know, you want to make sure that it benefits enough people in the town, and not be a lawyer for free. But if it's 50 people in the town, or 25 that are going to lose their job, you certainly would be very interested in helping out. But we don't have anyone at all that can do that. We have the cost.
We don't have the institution.
We don't have that. We need it. We need to have a sheriff that has a law book,
and we could have that at every town
for free.
For free.
For free.
And they would also give them a source of income for doing things and protecting the rights of the people rather than enforcing the obligations of the people to do what they're told in the traditional way.
We have too much of criminal enforcement, and we don't have any civil enforcement. That's what the problem is. Everyone can bring a criminal proceeding. All these powers that be look to bring criminal proceedings against the smallest of people. And 97% plead guilty. 97% plead guilty.
Does that mean like plea bargaining?
Even though they're innocent, they plead guilty.
Right, that happens.
Well, the reason is that the judge is not allowed to temper the sentence. Under federal law, the federal judge is required to give you 30 years.
If that's the
plead guilty.
Maximum?
Well, they have guidelines that say that if you plead guilty to stealing $6 million, you're going to get 12 years automatically.
Is that what they call mandatory sentencing?
Yes, the
they do
guidelines.
That within some of the drug laws.
Right, the mandatory. That's the Rockefeller laws. But federal laws require the judge to impose a sentence that has very little variation.
Really? Okay.
So that the prosecutors overcharge. They charge you more than you really did. You may not have done anything, but it doesn't matter. They overcharge so that you are forced into settling with them. Now, the judge has no right to give leniency in a sentence. But the prosecutor can take a 30-year sentence and reduce it to 2 months if he wants to. Why should the prosecutor have that ability?
All that power.
Yes. So the prosecutor overcharges, and you are forced into agreeing to go to jail for a year in order to avoid the possibility, very strong, that if you go to trial, you're going to lose. Do you know what percentage of people lose a criminal trial?
I don't.
Especially if they have money.
What?
If you are the woman that owns the Helmsley woman, Leona Helmsley, or the Regas brother, father and brother team, all of these people, what percentage of these people get off when they spend over $10 million at trial?
I have no idea.
0% get off. They all lose. The more money you have, the more you lose. the longer the sentence, the more money you have in America, the more you try to defend yourself, the more you are going to get as a sentence, because everyone except O.J. loses.
That's
Yes.
really amazing. Is that bad?
Yep,
Is that
yep.
How did it get to be such a pretty
Because the prosecutor has the ability to work 5 or 10 years at investigating and threatening people that if they don't testify, he'll indict them. So they spend 2 or 3, 4 years putting together a package of people who have been bribed.
Right.
They're the witnesses now. They've been bribed. They want to get...
That happens in international relations,
all
too,
over,
or
all over.
between nations. That's sort of the operative principle
So
of the
once
world.
they indict you, you 97% plead guilty because they'll get 30 years if they try to go to trial. You can't win at trial. With all the money in the world, you cannot win at trial.
That's amazing that we've allowed such a thing to go. And it's metaphor for the world.
Yeah.
No, and you're talking a local thing and everything, but it's a metaphor for the way the world operates. They have such power and everything that they, that's for us to keep in mind.
Right.
That's the world.
So what we need in that area,
it's unjust.
What we need in that area, I figured it out, and I submitted it as a rule to the federal judges, and they looked at it and they declined to go ahead with it. But I figured out that if we have a certain percentage of people that are convicted, that more and more we've got to require people to be tried. We've got to give the financing for people to have legitimate trials, and that if we, and I figured out, it's sort of complicated.
Instead of all these backroom deals.
Well, we've got to encourage trials and let the people resolve these issues themselves. Let the jury resolve whether someone is guilty or not. Not have the consequences of going to trial
just be blackmail. It's essentially blackmail.
Essentially blackmail. We've got to stop that. We've got to really have legitimate trials, but we need to finance the people who go to trial. We have to give them enough money to really defend themselves.
That would be this Attorney General Corps or something?
I don't know.
How would it work? You wanted to say, it's really an important concept. I don't know if you get much support from your colleagues and so forth.
None at all.
None.
None.
Nothing. Right, you're out there on the edge of that.
Nobody would.
I'm glad you finally got the idea that was submitted about Google with the big law firm begins. They come in. That's a good thing. Because it takes somebody on the outside to make a new thing. It's always upsetting to people who are comfortable in the system. And so somebody brings up an idea, and then people start cottoning on, and maybe they're starting to cotton on to your whole the thrust of your life's work, if I may say so, because it's really based on these principles of justice and a good understanding of the deficiencies and the structure of the law itself. And I really congratulate you on all that work.
My Google
and you finally got a big law firm coming on to your view about the thing with Google.
Well, they agree with me.
They do agree with you on principle, right?
Here's what happened. An individual in
Google's a big company.
It's going to be the largest ever.
The largest
ever.
Okay, and it's shaping up?
Well, they've eliminated search advertising. Has been...
This is antitrust.
Well, antitrust. Search advertising on internet is wiping out the newspapers in America.
They sure
and
are.
interestingly enough, is that the major dailies in America deserve to be wiped out. They're not giving us any information that's relevant to us. We don't find out anything about where we're getting injured, what we can do. It doesn't help the people. The newspapers keep us in line and tell us everything's okay, don't worry about it. Here's some more baseball, here's some more football, here's some movie stuff, but they're not telling us the real problems. They're not,
and that's the charge of the media also. The society in general does.
They're not exposing the Madoffs and the other rip-offs that are taking place. They're allowing...
Much less the everyday things that the system is inadequate to what we really should have.
So since you can't learn anything to really help you, it doesn't help you save your job, it really discourages you, it really is hurting you rather than helping you. People no longer buy the newspapers. And when you no longer buy the newspaper, the advertisers say, well, why should I advertise? They're switching into internet, which is more open, more democratic.
Well, you got 100 sites you put it. You and Drupal.
Yeah.
And that son of yours, you
Yeah.
put up a site like,
Yeah.
you know, and it's
he can put it up in 5 minutes.
5
He
minutes.
doesn't. I mean,
That's getting-
I put on my own sites usually. Yeah.
And the
but-
Law
yeah,
Mall, I
yeah.
want to say right now, we're going to put it up at the end. I think we got it on there. Law Mall is fantastic, your site, and you can do that. You're so well, so you're tech savvy, and you're able to use that, and you got these ideas, and you're a font of ideas that are relevant. And
you know, I put up a video 2 months ago, and I now have 1,538 people that have looked at it in 2 months.
Okay.
And it's a video where I encourage people to stop paying their mortgage.
Oh, wait a minute. Stop paying your mortgage. Now, that's sort of dangerous territory, isn't it, for a lot of people to go into?
Well,
because you're going to get
here's
foreclosure or something.
No, but I want them, as part of this, I want them to invite foreclosure.
Is this like
There's a benefit.
Is this like the canary in the mine?
There's a benefit to foreclosure.
Explain to people how there's a benefit to foreclosure.
Here's what's happening.
Okay. This is what's happening in terms of broader society.
Millions of people in America are unable to pay their mortgage.
Yeah, there's foreclosures.
Okay, now, there's a point at which people realize that 6 months from now, they're not going to be able to meet the payment.
Right.
But I can steal money from the baby's bank account, I can sell the car, I can do other things, but 6 months from now, 8 months from now, I know I will not have enough money to pay the mortgage.
Right. Okay.
Stop paying your mortgage today.
Pay the
Don't
baby
give
care.
the bank every last penny that you have. Use that money to defend yourself.
Okay.
Don't pay the bank the money, and then you have no money left.
Well, what about if it's an uncertain thing? I may not. No. What if it's this, Carl? I can lead the straight and narrow, do it, and then we'll have a mortgage party. We'll burn the mortgage. Everything's gonna be great, like a Frank Capra movie.
Right.
But I'm not sure I'm going to be able to.
Well,
I may or may not. It's not certain.
Well,
you know?
but you.
I don't mean to throw a monkey
Well,
wrench.
your aunt is dying, and that you're not sure whether she's going to die a year from now, 8 months from now, or 2 years from now. And when she dies, you expect to inherit several $1 million. So that why run the risk of a foreclosure if I can just keep going until the aunt dies? That's one thing.
Well, there are means by which you could have that sense of things, and you're suggesting defend
you
yourself.
Lost your job.
But why, in what?
You lost your job at $300,000 a year. You're now working for
you're
Walmart.
Not going to be able to meet
you're now working for Walmart at $8 an hour.
Okay, you know
and you
it's
can't
over.
afford $3,500 a month.
Okay, there's a lot of people
but you have $20,000 in the bank.
Okay.
So you think, well, you want to be honest and pay the bank as much as you can, and then when you're totally broke, you go to the bank and you plead with them, saying, "Please, I've been honest with you. I've given you everything I had. I want you." They'll tell you to get lost.
Right.
Stop paying your mortgage. Don't pay them all the money. Stop.
That's a big
because they're going to foreclose against you 8 months from now. Invite the foreclosure today, so you have enough money to pay for a defense, and you can keep yourself in the property for about 2 years without paying your mortgage.
You can do it within reasonable terms. And would you have to have good legal advice to do that, or counsel or something? We don't have these attorney generals to protect your rights. So there's nobody protecting the rights of the people.
You only have to spend a little bit of money to hire a lawyer to defend you on a timely basis in the foreclosure action.
In a way that is, I don't want to say formulaic.
Legitimate.
No, it's legitimate.
Yeah,
but
legitimate.
in a way, it doesn't have to be Clarence Darrow with great
legal. No, not at all.
You know, it could be just a lawyer, and it could become a procedure that could be done by just almost paralegal.
No. You need a lawyer. You have to have a lawyer.
You need it for the reasons, But you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's something that doesn't have to be. It's not a crapshoot what you're doing.
In fact, there is a crapshoot element. I estimate 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 15 people that defend a foreclosure action will wind up with a prize of keeping their home for free.
1 out of 10, okay.
Or 1 out of 15. The reason is there's a doctrine that started in Ohio with 3 federal decisions by the same judge that said if a bank doesn't have the original note or mortgage, that's a defense to a foreclosure action.
Okay.
With the way that the banks have been selling the mortgages as soon as they get them.
You're bundling.
Yeah, they're bundling them. Nobody knows in some cases where the note and mortgage is.
It's nothing but a thing on a computer.
Right. So you have a defense.
Because you don't have
that the bank may not own the note or mortgage.
This is for a mortgage on real property.
Only on real property.
But you'd have to have that with the county clerk somewhere.
Well, no, it doesn't matter. That doesn't mean they haven't sold it to someone else.
Okay.
They may have sold it to other people who registered it or not. But registration of a mortgage does not prove the ownership
You
of the
have to
mortgage.
have the title guarantee.
You have to have the.
Isn't that a large part of a title search?
Where is the note?
The
I
title.
want to see the note.
Right.
The promissory note. I owe $200,000 and I sign. I want to see that original
That's what I'm
note.
saying, but they
Where's
got
the note? Where's the note?
Okay, you keep saying it, Counselor.
Okay.
I understand.
Okay.
But the thing is that you have title guarantee and all this kind you title search and all these kind of things that are part of the way real estate and property relationships are handled.
Okay.
Are they not?
Okay, but let me explain.
Because what you're
let me
saying
go back.
now might apply to a lot of people in the audience who are in that situation.
Let me explain.
So this is practical, not just theoretical.
Let me explain.
Okay.
A person shows up to a mortgage for a closing, and they sign a promissory note. That note is given to the attorney who turns over the money. The attorney then transmits a note to somebody, and we don't know who. Okay. And that person may resell the note to someone else.
Okay, that's
now all of the recording of that transaction that took place in that room takes place within a couple of days.
Okay.
But we don't know where the note has been going meanwhile.
That's a very esoteric, but that's a very important part of the overall structure.
The transaction is that you owe money to the person.
Is that a secondary note or something?
No, it's a note. Okay. It's a promissory note.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Now, that note is like currency. Whoever owns the note gets the money.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who's registered.
Okay.
Somebody that buys a note and doesn't see registration can be an owner of the note. If the transaction is registered, then somebody else can't take a mortgage from the owner of the property.
It gets a little
complicated.
It gets a little complicated, but what you want to do with something complicated like that is try to get it into a pattern where it could be understood by a person that is a regular person, not a legal one.
I only want the judge to
because
understand.
what you're saying now is very important, because their foreclosures are trying to be avoided by a lot of good people who have been hurt by this hitting upside the head of the economy and so forth. And it's really important, and there should be something where that can be made understandable in simple language and can be reduced to a pattern of something can be reduced to a Bloomberg form or something, do you understand what I'm saying? A thing that they can do.
It isn't quite that good.
It isn't quite that simple.
It takes more than that. You need to look at the transaction, and then you have to take into account, number one, that the bank probably used fraudulent financial statements. Number two, the bank knowingly lent money in a greater amount than they knew the person could repay, especially with the variable rate note that's going to kick in shortly. And the bank didn't advise the individual on how much the interest would be until they showed up at the closing, so that's contrary to law. The bank was manipulating real estate prices in doing this, and they never verified the financial statements submitted by the owner, so that the broker and the owner knowingly gave false financial information to the bank that used it knowingly that it was false in order to be able to generate a lot of mortgages, sell them out immediately, and take their profits. So,
and let me stop you for a minute. I watched Obama the other day talk. Did you watch him when he gave the talk about health care reform?
Bit,
I watched the whole thing very carefully, and he said, among other things, to the doctors, you were here to practice the art and the science of medicine, not as bean counters to do accounting.
Correct.
Okay?
Yeah. And
he said, we have to get a thing that's simplified. And I'm going to try and ask you this.
Okay.
And they said, they're going to do the medical records. Okay? You're going to have the medical records, so you're going to have a thing, and there's going to be that. And you've got complexity in terms of understanding a human organism or something. And you got complexity in everything. And there are details you can go into and everything like that. So with the law. Are we going to be able to get it down to where you went through those things like a template? They call it a template in software. Or something, where you've got the template that's done by somebody who's very smart, 20 years old, and they make a thing, and they get these things you just went through. I don't want to go into details. It could be the subparagraph of this and that and this and that and this, and this could be the thing, and you put it into a program, and it would punch out a pattern from just basic things where the legal aspects of dealing with people could be submitted to something like medical, or in general, could be submitted to cyber processes that could give a pattern that people could relate to and become generally understandable, rather than caught up in all the gobbledygook of each of the various disciplines that operate in linking together world
Let me
society.
give you four handles.
What I mean? The legal is one, medical's another, and every field.
Let me give you four handles for the medical field that relate to this. Number one, differential diagnosis has been around for a long time. Artificial intelligence is part of this, that it can surmise what you're doing.
Right. It
So
can learn.
that it can learn.
Yeah.
And then we have there's some other concepts that are relating
parallel
to this.
Processing.
Well,
pattern recognition.
Pattern. I mean, all of these are different disciplines that can be brought together here.
In computer science, that is.
Yes.
I'm talking about legal.
Well, the same thing.
Because the legal, can we cybernate lawyering to where you have a pattern, you can put it in. It isn't all idiosyncratic, and it isn't all the genius of the individual. I said it doesn't take a Darwin to do it. You have somebody who's really a legal beagle, a legal scholar, really smart, or investment banking. They're going to be doing investment decisions that are going to involve thousands of dollars to do. And what does an investment banker do? He comes in, he's got some way where he got some money, he's got a Rolodex, he can make connections, and he's going to make a plan and a business plan. It's going to involve everything. He can buy a $4,000 bottle of wine for somebody to get the contract with somebody's. What does they do? It's going to be put into cyber. It's going to all be put into cyber, all these things, financial decisions. And it would apply to the legaling profession, and it might help you in getting something to where it can help the people by sticking it in, and you get like a blood pressure.
Here's the difference.
In terms of your thing with the mortgage
Here's
foreclosure.
the difference. Wall Street develops something and has 50,000 salesmen going out there, and they call 10 or 20 people, and they find one person who buys, and that becomes a very successful product. In the law, unfortunately, I only have one customer. Do you know who that is?
Who?
The judge. And if I can't convince him, I lose. So that I don't have that same capability of trying out with 20 people, and then if I find the winner, that I win. If my argument doesn't prevail, my client loses his home because that one judge denies the relief. It doesn't work itself like it should.
I'm not sure I'm talking the same thing. I'm just talking whether, maybe it's different than that. But what I'm saying is everybody who's a specialist in something will say, or somebody who's a trader.
It's expert
They think
systems.
if I use expert systems,
that's part of it. That's part
but
of
that's
it.
what I'm trying to say. The whole human scenario and information and specialization, and they got ads for Ballot about you can beat your competition in 1/10 of a billionth of a second if you're a trader that's really on the Fanucci curve, that's going to, all this kind of stuff. It's smoke and mirrors. And so it is with legal. And so the legal is such that nobody can understand. You laid out all that stuff that could be obvious to an individual who's got a foreclosure thing, and he can't go through all those details or not, or some way that the automation process can help the human condition toward justice.
I would say that.
And let the people understand what the hell's going on instead of being layered with gobbledygook from each of the various disciplines that make up our profession.
As long as the people who are hurting us, the ones who are causing injury, force us to go into court, we have the problem that we only have one chance of getting justice, and it isn't automated. These things have to be crafted individually, because if they were automated, the other side would find a solution to each thing that you try, and you would have the same result all the time, where the person would lose his property.
Well, what about
you have to be creative here. You have to show you have to show some differences, and it doesn't lend itself to that. But I agree. But I agree that the issues really can be brought together, that we can find a lot of common issues here. There are new systems in 3.0, for example. Web 3.0 is looking for. They're using artificial intelligence. They're taking each web page and breaking it down so that meaningful results can be brought up with search, instead of having 1,000 pages that don't tell you anything. They're working on that.
I think Brin and company are working on that as well as translating the languages. But they've got to improve the search thing, because that the whole thing and the capability. The only reason I bring it up is there's a thing. Did you ever run into? You knew Bob Dobbs, did you, Bob? Bob and Carol over in Hawaii now. They'll be coming through again. Really a good guy, McLuhan, Joyce, and everything. But then he had a friend, Mark Stallman. He's an investment banker. Young guy. He took AOL public, among other things and everything, when first they were announcing. So he knew that. But his dad was smart, a scholar, and was in the room with Norbert Wiener, about 48, when 12 guys in a room or something, when they coined the term cyber, which is now sort of characteristic of the time in which we live. And so he was like that. And Norbert Wiener said, information overload, and this is a general term, information overload permits pattern recognition. And human consciousness is really good at pattern recognizing. So what we have with the expert system, we want a thing, and we're going to have the ability, it's going to be so that you get pattern. This is confusion here, and it's all mixed up, and it's all like that and everything. But if you're up at another level, you get to be where you can see the pattern between this system and that system. So your legal system's tied into your medical system tied into the educational system. Everything is interrelated and everything. And most of the people are going around dealing with systems that deal only with their tunnel vision view.
Let me tell you.
But we got to get to a large pattern.
Let me tell you what the insurance companies do about that pattern.
What?
Every time a case comes down that hurts the insurance companies, they all scurry to the form and put in another line in their thing that eliminates the value of that case.
Do you think that the change, they're hitting the system, the whole system, they let Lehman go, the whole system, and they've taken over Freddie Mae and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and they've done this, and AIG and all this, and Mr. Obama's coming through with a lot of pattern recognizing, and he's saying we got to have a lot of change. It's there for change. And that we're going to be able to get to a system where people will be under. He said that a number of things he said where he wants to get understanding of things at that level rather than the isolated. I'm talking out of just experience, but I know that carbon 60 is coming. It's only about 3 or 4 years out, and it's coming. It's going to be the basis of all the nanotechnology. It's going to undercut all materials, new materials, and capabilities that are unforeseen. And they're going to have the capability, exponential capability for information processing.
Okay, I'll jump to the next step that you're reaching for, and that is that you're obviously, and I know this from separate conversations, you're obviously heading towards the discussion that it is clear we're not going to have any need for jobs in the future, not many jobs. A lot of us will not have to work. There won't be meaningful jobs for many people because technology will create the goods and services that we need to sustain ourselves.
I think that's coming,
what do we do? What do we do now?
No, it's a little more nuanced than that. It's that we allow a pattern coming out of history that is based upon, and then we got the economists, and everybody's specialized. The economics of the world is too important to be left to the economists. It's got to have something else.
Can we agree that the economists failed us miserably in the past several years?
I don't think so. I think that we're all caught up in it, and that we've come to a crunch in history, and I think we're coming to a qualitative transformation, and we're all caught up in history. You have to go to the arts. I mean, Joyce said, history is a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken. We're awakening from a 200,000-year thing that's been gestating, and we're coming into a new order of things, and that's the thing that's going on. You don't blame anybody for it. It's just like a pregnancy, and we're gestating, and we're coming, and we don't have we have institutions that we're reifying that come out of a historical context that is being qualitatively transformed at the level of capability. And we don't have a system or an understanding of what the future requires. We're reifying the institutions that were born within the conditions that have been qualitatively transformed at the level of capability. That's what's going on. It's like a birth. And we don't have institutions that relate to that. So we need that. And it's the intellectuals that are falling down on the job. I personally think Mr. Obama is giving us really very good indications of moving in and I think they're moving in the right direction myself. That's the sense I have. But they've got to make it simpler and understandable, and systems and justice. And I think all of those things, all those 200 sites you have, are going to come together in some sort of paradigm shift.
Have you ever thought that instead of the view that you have, that there's a different view, and that the people who control the economy have succeeded quite ably in avoiding any meaningful regulation in order to permit them to do exactly what they've done.
They did.
And they did it, and they did it very successfully.
They did it particularly.
And we ought to congratulate them on their insight in knowing what institutional reforms needed not to be passed in order to allow them to steal our country from us.
Right.
They did a great job at that, and we ought to recognize that.
That is correct. So, I think you're right, with the swaps and derivatives.
Right, so they stole the country from us.
And they used intellectual, yes, all of that.
And where I am trying, since the year 2003, to try to have some reform of a legal thing at the local level to stop this, my words didn't mean anything, and even though our thoughts were there, we couldn't do anything. So we have a political system that won't allow correction.
No,
and I don't know how you're going to change it.
Well, I don't think it's going to come. I don't think, for whatever it's worth, I don't think you're going to look really, in the first instance, to the political institutions or politicians or business people. I think the main thing is going to come from the intellectuals.
But they're not heard.
The intellectuals are the ones that are at fault, because they're all bought and paid for and have their identities wrapped up within institutions that are run by the people who own all the assets.
Is Geithner an intellectual of long standing?
No, he is a tunnel visioned. I said before, the economy is too big an idea to be left to the economists. You said a thing. We should have a thing, reach out to the people, to have ideas and all of that. I think Obama's trying that. He's trying. And the economists and the lawyers, it's too important to be left to the lawyers. It's too important to be left to the doctors. All these specializing things. And they have their identities wrapped up. They have their sources of income wrapped up within that, all wrapped up within an institution. So it's the intellectuals, maybe some of the free intellectuals who are free from having to be concerned with the professional things that are there, who are going to come up with the underlying theory of why there is something different. You can't see the water if you're the fish in the water. You have to be outside of it. It's the intellectuals that are falling down on the job. It's not the politicians. Although they have to give some impetus to the politicians to move in the right direction in terms of broader movements within the evolution of things in the universe.
The problem that you don't address, and this is the basic problem here, is that Geithner is known to 100,000 people for every person who knows your name.
No, you will.
It's 100,000 to 1 or something like that, roughly.
Well, millions to 1.
Million to 1.
Yeah, I'm not known at all.
Well,
he's famous
a million
now
to 1.
Yeah,
and he's not an intellectual.
No, he's an
he's a tool. He's a tool.
I think
he's an inexperienced tool. He caused the disaster.
No.
Yes, he did.
No, I don't think that. History caused it, and they've had a thing, and there's no one to blame. I don't think there's anyone to blame.
Well, there is.
No, the only thing to blame is general ignorance. And that's all. And we've all been caught up.
No, but
somebody wants to, even the Republicans come and they'll say Madoff. So they'll find a scapegoat. Madoff. Well, hell, practically the whole economy is a Ponzi scheme. Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. The whole of historical development is a Ponzi scheme built like that. History is a nightmare compared to what we're now coming to in terms of capability.
There's a simple cure that everyone knows and nobody creates.
What's that?
The simple cure is having all campaign financing paid by taxpayers.
I bet you got a site about that.
I do.
You do, and that's what they call.
I have a video.
Young man, that's what they call pattern rigging. You got 200 sites, and those patterns, I submit, those patterns are going to be interrelated, and we're going to see those patterns. Instead of going into the details of each of them, we're going to see a pattern that'll emerge.
It's a chapter. Each thing is
relevant.
a chapter.
Well, it's a chapter, but they're interrelation.
Of course they are.
So it's Mr. What's his name said. Pattern recognition is permitted at another level, and you're looking at things, and then we can go into great detail about everything. Yeah. You can spend a whole lifetime on one little subject area,
but it's
and they do.
Part of a larger picture.
Everything is, course, and then also you got 200. I'm glad you got 200, only a mere 20, because you've got more toward the way the system of the universe works. Is you got these patterns, and you can see patterns between the parts. Most people are dealing with one specific. Who's to blame? Is it the Jews to blame? Is it the blacks to blame? Is it the Is it the patriarchy? All the blame, because everything is being challenged now like at a time of qualitative. And what we need is comprehensive vision. Galileo, the Catholic Church didn't let him off the hook until about 5 years ago for having said that we are not the center of the universe. It really messed up people's sense of identity. What's coming now is going to mess up people's sense of identity in terms of the traditional thing, and it's going to be a paradigm of paradigm shifts, and it's going to, if you're going to have if you're going to have a elementary just world, who could imagine we're going to have a real just world where the real capability of everybody is going to be able to be legitimate, be offered, and it's going to be elementary just for all, and all of the ecology and all of the creatures and all of this. You're going to have a world that is qualitatively different than the one in which all of our events in a gestating way have emerged. So there's going to be, but we only let him off the hook, but we don't remember him for all the orbit pathways of Jupiter that maybe was part of the argument there. Remember him for the paradigm. The paradigm shift now is that we have transcended, in my view, we have transcended at the level of capability material scarcity. All of our institutions, economic theory is based upon the assumption of scarcity. We've transcended it at the level of capability. And nobody says it. Nobody can bring it up because it's too big. Intellectuals can deal with something like that, but everybody else is caught up within the institutions that are outdated and will be subsumed. But they're not providing an alternative, particularly at the level of economic theory. My theory. Well, we're going to have to allow for people to be liberated.
But when you say that we have to allow, what is the mechanism for allowing your views to be heard by everyone?
It's not my views. It's the views of the way.
This view.
It's a view. I mean, it's happening.
Well, it isn't happening.
Oh, well, okay.
It's the problem.
Okay.
And that we have the thieves in charge, and they're continuing to be in charge, and they're not changing the system enough to make it worthwhile.
No, they're I disagree with you in that.
They gave away $1 trillion.
I know that. AIG,
to the bad guys.
Right, and they do. And you're going to have to reify. You're going to have to shore up those institutions. You don't want it to collapse. You can't have the credit markets collapse. I think Obama.
So you're buying what they say. That
well, no,
we had to give that money away.
Not only buying what they say. They got us some time. They got it. It could have been Mr. Paulson on the September 20 said we're heading for the complete.
We really don't know. It may be that it wasn't necessary, and the money wasn't even spent.
Right.
A lot of the money was never spent.
I understand, but they're doing it. They're including. But what I'm trying to tell you is where they're trending. Where it's going, I mean, I can't.
Where it's trending is that we're losing the country. That we're decreasing the value of everyone's assets. We're having lower employment. We have more homes that are getting lost. We're becoming a third world country, and the rich are getting richer. That's where we're heading, and I don't see any stopping of it.
Well, the rich are always getting richer.
Well, they shouldn't be.
But what the intellectuals are not providing an alternative.
No one's publicizing the intellectuals because the system has a mechanism for stopping the truth from getting done.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is about 3 or 4 months. About 3 or 4 months, we're going to get it together. We haven't got it together. That's all. They haven't provided. That's my sense.
And the world is going to come to an end at a certain date also.
Not the world come to the end, but there is a moment of qualitative transformation in the evolutionary process. We're part of an evolutionary process. We may be very well. There was hominoid.
If 4 months from now we're in the same boat, what would you say now?
Well, then I would say maybe I was wrong. That could be, but I'm sensing it. You know, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. And it won't come from the politics. They're moving in that direction. But in terms of particularly theory, economic theory, economics is too important. And they're moving in that direction. The Congress is moving in that direction.
They're moving to keep themselves in power. That's where they're moving.
Of course, that's what they do. Okay. They'll do that. That's right.
And they're continuing to do that.
And you're going to have a system that's going to be able to be understood by them. And they're moving in a direction where it's going to be easier for the intellectuals to come to a thing that's going to be qualitatively subsuming of the outdated institutions in a way that will be liberating of the people, like your 200 sites. It's very important that way. It'll come to the fore. It's going to be that, and the ecology and that kind of thing, but will also be able to understood by the people who are responsible for our inherited institutions, but they will be a lagging indicator. They'll be the last. It should be that way. It'll anchor us to history. But there will be a qualitative transformation that's coming out of all this hard work and the things you've been doing, and I'm really looking for the pattern. The pattern is there.
The pattern
and the pattern
comes
down. No, I don't think so. I think the pattern, the weapons are now species lethal, Carl. I've been going through that. Something could go off from Israel, or something could go off, and if they're unleashed, it's the end of the species. Brand new.
That's true.
And on the right side, no, that is true. It could be modeled. We
That's
should
right.
bring that out. That should be up on everybody's consciousness. Okay,
that's true.
So that's a new thing,
Yeah.
different than the Second World War.
Yeah.
What is comparable on the existential side, on the living side, or the positive side? Suggestion: we have transcended 200,000 years of living in a condition of scarcity. For one to win, another had to lose. We now have the ability. We have transcended material scarcity since about 1970. That's my thing. That's what all this modeling shows. We haven't caught up with it yet. That's qualitatively different than what we have come up with out of history. So we need a new economics. We need everything. And it's going to create a condition where instead of having all the inequities of the power and so forth coming out of history, we're going to have a system that's going to relate people to the way things are being produced, which is increasingly technologically oriented and is going to gallop that way. You have to have an alternative way of distributing income other than slavery, wages. And labor theory of value informs all.
I think wages and slavery are pretty much the same thing now.
Well, they are. They call it, Marxists call it that.
Yeah.
But I mean, that informs virtually all economic theory. And the only thing, they'll get past that. Obama's going to get past it. They're already talking about a capital rediffusion insurance system within the federal system. It was on the news today, Bloomberg. They're talking about it. They're getting there. And then they're like an alternate way to form capital and a way of distributing income other than labor. And so then they're going to have to come and investigate our basic policy grounding statement, the Employment Act 1946, and question employment, the work ethic, and all of these things that are used in order to keep
There's too many ifs, too many words, and it's not going to work as
maybe we
simply
need
as
a
that.
pattern recognizing, something like a consigliere who can recognize all the patterns.
What we need is to have people be able to run for office paid for by tax money, and you're going to have a new group of people in there who are beholden to the public and not to the rich.
Also, don't forget the tax thing you're doing. How's it good? How are things in Lonesome, Indiana? How are
Nothing
things
happening really?
Nothing. But that's a great idea. That idea of tax like a crazy.
I'm trying to work on it.
The pattern of the 200. I should see a Carl Pearson pattern. And what it is, it's all good. And it's all for justice. And it's all dealing with things in a way that's going to be included in that kind of thing.
My websites are really to help people.
I know they are.
Any town can create prosperity for itself. It doesn't need me. I have outlined only 4 things they need to do. I've given them a free college.
Right.
Imagine they can set up a free college for residents. I mean, good God.
Did you see, Carl, did you see that all the leading lecturers of the major Ivy League schools are now putting this stuff up free on YouTube for anybody to get the best lecture?
Right.
Why would anybody go to the university and pay all that?
MIT is
they got their whole curriculum.
They have the curriculum.
It's coming, man. It's coming out of the cybernetic necessity. They're going to have to let the people be free.
Well,
they're going to have to let the
Sarah
people
Lawrence
be free.
College is still charging like tuition of $54,000 a year.
I know, yes, $54,000.
Something like that.
Sarah
That's
Lawrence?
tuition. Yeah, tuition.
What is it at Harvard? What did it set you back?
Well,
at Harvard?
The difference between tuition and the cost of college, you have to remember that.
Yeah.
The cost of college in many cases is around $80,000 a year because you have expenses.
Right.
But in my cost, when I have a college. As an equivalency college, the cost is $2,000 a year.
Congratulations.
And,
that's a good thing.
And the Attorney General for that town can raise that money rather easily.
And protect the folks.
And have basically a free college.
Law Mall. Get to this man's site. This man's got so many interrelated ideas about justice and such a good. Thanks for coming in.
Good.
Always
Thank you very
good
much.
to see you, Carl. Carl Pearson, a great citizen of the world and somebody that we should all repair to for getting some ideas of what in a practical